What you're about to hear might shock you, and it might even frustrate you. Many IELTS candidates with solid English still get a low score on the listening test. Not because they can't understand spoken English, but because they keep making the same mistakes over and over again. Those mistakes are quietly pulling their score down every single time. The truth is, high-scoring candidates approach the listening test differently. They don't try to understand every single word. They don't panic when they miss an answer, and they definitely don't wait for the recording to start before looking at the questions. They know exactly how the test works, and they use that knowledge to their advantage. We've helped thousands of students prepare this way through our IELTS packages. They discover how strategic preparation can help them approach the IELTS with more confidence. In this video, I'll show you 10 common mistakes IELTS candidates make in the listening test and what you should do instead. By the end, you'll know what's hurting your score and how to fix it. If you struggle with IELTS listening, keep watching. This might be exactly what you've been missing. Mistake number 1 is not reading the questions before the recording starts. This is one of the most damaging habits a candidate can have, and it's surprisingly common. Many candidates simply sit and wait for the audio to start. By the time it does, they're scrambling to understand the questions. At the same time, they are trying to listen for the answers. That is very difficult to do simultaneously, and it often results in missed answers. What high-scoring candidates do is different. They use every second of the preparation time to read through the questions carefully. This means that when the recording begins, they already know what information they need to listen for. They're not reading and listening at the same time. Instead, they're just listening with a clear purpose. For example, if you read a question and see that it asks for a location, you already know to listen for place names. You can focus on that part of the recording the moment it begins. That kind of focused listening is far more effective than trying to process everything at once. By simply using the preparation time to read every question before the recording starts, you can make a noticeable difference in how many answers you catch. This is especially true in the earlier sections where the questions tend to move quickly. The second mistake is trying to understand every single word in the recording. This sounds like a sensible approach, but it actually works against you. The recordings move at a natural pace. If you get stuck trying to process a word or phrase you didn't catch, you lose track of what comes next. As a result, you can miss the answer entirely and fall further behind as the recording continues. The key is to listen selectively. You don't need to understand everything. You only need to understand enough to answer the questions in front of you. Train yourself to listen for the specific information each question is asking about. These could be a name, a number, a place, or a reason. Let the rest of the audio flow past you without trying to process every detail. Think of it like this. If a question asks for the name of a street, your job is to catch a street name. You don't need to understand everything the speakers say about it. Everything else in that part of the recording is background. Once you start thinking about listening this way, the test becomes much more manageable. This is a skill that takes practice, but developing it can help you improve your ability to catch the right answers. Another very common mistake is losing focus after missing an answer. This is one of the most damaging things you can do in the listening test. It affects a huge number of candidates. When you miss an answer, you might spend the next several seconds worrying about it. You replay it in your mind and feel frustrated. By the time you refocus, you've missed the next answer too. The fix is straightforward but requires real discipline. If you miss an answer, let it go immediately. Move on to the next question. You can only answer what's still ahead of you, not what has already passed. It helps to think of each question as a completely fresh start. One practical way to build this habit is to practice it deliberately. When you do practice tests at home, try to keep moving forward without pausing the recording if you miss an answer. Doing this consistently helps it become a natural response over time. Missing one question does not have to affect any other question unless you allow it to. Stay focused on what's coming next to help protect your overall score. Mistake number 4 is not predicting the type of answer needed before the recording begins. During the preparation time, most candidates simply read the questions without thinking deeply about what kind of answer is needed. This is a missed opportunity. Knowing what to listen for before the recording even begins is a big part of answering correctly. Look at each question and ask yourself what type of information is needed. Is the answer likely to be a number, a date, a name, a place, or an action? For example, in form completion questions, you might notice that one blank needs a telephone number and another blank might clearly need a surname. In note completion questions, you might see that one gap follows the word near. This tells you the answer is probably a place. These small observations prepare your brain to recognize the right answer the moment it's spoken. High-scoring candidates often do this automatically. This is because they've made it a habit through regular practice. It takes only a few seconds per question during the preparation time. However, it can make a significant difference to how confidently and accurately you answer. Building this into your routine is a great way to help improve your accuracy. Here is a mistake that many candidates don't realize they're making: ignoring the word limit. The instructions tell you how many words and numbers you can write. A typical instruction might say, write no more than 2 words and/or a number. If you write an answer that exceeds this limit, it will be marked as incorrect. This happens even if the information itself was right. This is a rule and it is applied strictly. Before each section begins, always check the word limit in the instructions. Keep it in mind as you listen. If you hear a phrase that contains the right information but is 3 words long and the limit is 2, you need to decide which words to include. Often, one of the words is an unnecessary modifier that can be removed without changing the meaning. For example, if you hear a large conference room, but the limit is 2 words, conference room is likely the correct answer. It's also worth noting that articles such as a, an, and the count as words. Many candidates forget this and end up writing 1 word too many. Check the limit, count your words, and make sure your answer fits before moving on. Now, here is something important. Many IELTS candidates think that knowing a few listening strategies is enough to get a strong result, but it's not enough. To do well in IELTS listening, you need to understand exactly how the different question types work and which strategies you need to use to catch the answer successfully. That's exactly what we teach in our IELTS packages. Our students get step-by-step guidance on how to approach the listening test effectively, so they feel confident and ready on test day. They learn how IELTS listening questions are designed and which strategies they need to apply to answer them successfully. Our IELTS packages include lessons for all tasks, sample answers, practice tests, and much more. If you're serious about achieving the IELTS score you need, click the link below to learn more. Let's continue with the 6th mistake. It is writing answers in the wrong form. For example, if the question asks for a noun and you write a verb form, the answer will be marked wrong. Similarly, if a plural is required but you write a singular, the mark is lost. The same applies to verb tenses. If the answer needs to fit grammatically into a past tense sentence, using the present tense won't work. The way to avoid this is to look carefully at how the question is structured before the recording begins. Check how the blank fits into the sentence around it. Is it part of a noun phrase? Does it follow an article like a or the? Does it come after a preposition? These clues tell you what grammatical form your answer needs to take. For example, suppose the question reads, "The manager was responsible for the," and here comes the blank of new staff. You know immediately that the answer needs to be a noun, probably ending in ment or ing. When you listen to the recording with this in mind, you can write the answer in the correct form. This prevents you from simply copying what you hear without thinking about the grammar. Let's talk about mistake number 7, not checking spelling and numbers carefully. Spelling is something that many candidates overlook in the listening test, but it matters. If a name, a place, or a technical term is spelled incorrectly in your answer, the mark is lost. There is no partial credit for a close attempt. Numbers are equally important and arguably easier to get wrong under pressure. If the speaker says 15 and you write 50, that's the wrong answer. This happens often because the sounds are very similar. The same applies to pairs like 13 and 30, 16 and 60, or 18 and 80. It is easy to mix these up when you are listening quickly under stress. For spelling, try to stay especially alert when the speaker spells something out for you. This happens frequently in section 1. Make sure you write down each letter as it is said. Avoid guessing or writing what you think the word looks like. If you're not sure about a spelling, write your best attempt rather than leaving it blank. A blank answer gets 0 marks, but a guess gives you a chance. Here is a mistake that many candidates are not prepared for: falling for distractors. The IELTS examiners deliberately include distractors in the recordings. Distractors are pieces of information that sound like the correct answer but are not. For example, a speaker might mention a price and then say it has changed, giving a new price. If you weren't listening carefully, you might write down the first number you heard. That would be wrong. The correct answer is the updated one. Distractors can take many forms. A speaker might suggest one option and then reject it in favor of another. They might mention something and then contradict it a few seconds later. In multiple choice questions, all of the options may be mentioned in the recording. However, only one is actually correct based on what was finally said. Distractors appear across all 4 sections, but they are especially common in sections 1 and 3. The key to avoiding them is to keep listening even after you think you've heard the answer. If the speaker goes on to correct, change, or contradict what they just said, the final version is the right answer. Don't stop listening, even if you think you found the answer. By the way, if you want this channel to keep going, write yes in the comments, click like and subscribe. We only make videos that you actually want to watch. The next mistake is not knowing the question types before the test. Many candidates don't think about this until it's too late. They go into the listening test without understanding how each question type works. Map labeling, flowchart completion, and multiple choice all require different approaches. If you go into the test without knowing these differences, you lose valuable time trying to figure out what to do while the recording is already playing. That time cannot be recovered. The IELTS listening test includes a range of question types across its 4 sections. Some questions ask you to complete notes or forms with missing information. Others ask you to label a map or a diagram. Some give you a set of options to choose from. Each of these works differently, and each one requires you to listen in a slightly different way. For example, in map labeling questions, you need to follow directions and match them to a visual layout. For multiple choice questions, you need to listen carefully for the final answer rather than stop at the first option mentioned. Before your test, try to become familiar with every question type that might appear in the listening test. Study how each one works, what the instructions typically say, and which strategies are most effective for each type. When you sit down on test day and see a question type you recognize, you can focus all your attention on listening rather than on working out what you need to do. That preparation can make a real difference to your final result. The final mistake is not practicing under real test conditions. Many dedicated students put in a lot of hours preparing for IELTS listening. However, they don't practice in a way that reflects what the real test actually feels like. They pause the audio when they miss something. They read the transcript while listening. Sometimes they do one section at a time rather than completing the full test in one sitting. When they arrive on test day, the experience feels unfamiliar. It can feel much harder than expected, and their performance suffers as a result. Practicing under real conditions means sitting in a quiet space and playing the full recording without pausing it. You write your answers as you listen and complete the entire test from start to finish without any help or interruptions. This kind of practice builds the concentration and endurance you need for the real thing. It trains your brain to stay focused over the full duration of the test, not just for 1 or 2 sections at a time. It also helps you identify your weak points clearly. You might discover that you consistently lose marks in section 3. Alternatively, you might find that multiple choice questions are harder for you than completion questions. Once you know where your weaknesses are, you can target those areas specifically in your preparation. This is much better than practicing everything equally. The more closely your practice matches the real test experience, the more confident you are likely to feel on the day. That's it. These are 10 mistakes to avoid in IELTS listening. If you want expert guidance for your IELTS preparation, check out our IELTS packages using the link below. Our packages include step-by-step guidance, sample answers, practice tests, and other useful resources to help you feel confident on test day. I hope you liked this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe to the channel, and hit the bell icon so you're notified when the next video comes out. Also, share this video with your friends so they can improve their IELTS score too. See you in the next video!